So I'm going to share my screen really quick. So what I'm going to do today, I'm just going to read from a PowerPoint that talks a little bit about where I work, Adoptions from the Heart, and then I'll open the floor up to any questions that anybody has, or we can wait until the end after all the presenters have a chance to go. Let me see. And please raise your hands if you have any questions throughout, and I'll be happy to answer them. So hi everyone, my name is Micaiah Odom. I am an adoption social worker with Adoptions from the Heart, and my pronouns are she, her. A little bit about me, I recently earned my MSW in 2021, and I am a licensed social worker in Pennsylvania. However, I do work in the Delaware office of Adoptions from the Heart now. I did start in Pennsylvania, but now I'm in Delaware. So a little about our agency. Adoptions from the Heart was founded in 1985 by Maxine Chalker, president and CEO, and an adoptee herself. The adoption agency actually began in the home of Maxine's basement and grew into the first East Coast agency doing open adoptions. So now we are one of the largest domestic adoption agencies on the East Coast with 9 offices and consultants in 6 states. In January 2020, Maxine's daughter, Heidi Gonzalez, was named executive director, and she began working from the agency in 1986, a year after it was founded. She began as a secretary, then a caseworker, international program manager, web mistress, and director of marketing, and the associate director, and now she's the executive director. So who can adopt through our agency specifically? Any individual or couple must be 21 or older at the time of application. Applicants must be a minimum of 10 years older than the child that they are seeking to adopt, or a maximum of 50 years older than the child they are seeking to adopt. Single individuals, members of the LGBTQ plus community, married couples, or couples who've been living together for at least 2 years where states allow are also eligible. Please note that Virginia laws require couples to be married. So if you live in Virginia, you do have to be married to your partner. Adoptions from the Heart is only accepting prospective adoptive parents who are open to all racial backgrounds and ethnic heritages. And the families will be evaluated for their appropriateness to adopt transracially. We always say you're under evaluation until you're officially home study approved. And if transracial adoption is not deemed an appropriate fit for your family, our agency will still be happy to provide you with a home study to be used through another agency or avenue of adoption. But you will not be accepted into Adoptions from the Heart domestic open adoption program if you are not open to all races. Benchmarks of LGBTQ plus inclusion. So the HRC Human Rights Campaign has the All Children, All Families participating agencies that are recognized in one of the 3 tiers of recognition, depending on the extent to which they have implemented the ACAF benchmarks of LGBTQ plus inclusion. And Adoptions from the Heart ranks at the top tier of that. To achieve this level of recognition, all benchmarks must be in place for policy and practice areas and demonstrate at least one example of innovation in policy and practice. Some of these benchmarks include non-discrimination, staff training, rolling out the welcome mat, parent best practices, youth best practices, sustainability and capacity building, leadership and innovation. What is open adoption? So open adoption is an agreement between birth parents and adoptive parents to have some level of contact that's comfortable for all. So obviously we're a very pro birth parent agency, so we don't force any birth parents who don't want openness, and that is completely their choice. There are requirements for adoptive parents. I'll get to that in a bit. But usually we see birth parents who don't want openness right away, we see them open up a little bit more in the future because that option is always there for them. The future contact agreement, if there is openness, may be legally binding in some states, but in every state, the agreement is at least morally binding. So we'll have everyone during placement sign a morally binding future contact agreement. Some benefits of open adoption include sensitivity for the feelings of all parties. Expectant and birth parents select the family, so adoptive parents know that they were chosen to raise this child. Ongoing shared medical information, so we always try to get a self-reported medical background form filled out from the not prospective adoptive parents, the expectant or birth parents, so we're able to give that to the adoptive parents that are chosen. So even if the birth parent doesn't want openness, we always make sure we get some kind of background, whether that's medical, social, or both. Another benefit includes knowledge of birth parents' personality, special abilities, and talents. That's the social background I was just talking about. And the adoptee will have fewer unknowns, and their questions will be able to be answered openly and honestly with more detail. We do always encourage our adoptive families to start telling their child their adoption story from the beginning. We are an open adoption agency, so obviously we believe in that openness, even if there's not direct contact with the birth parents. It's still nice for them to have that piece of their story. So some agency requirements for open adoption. Everyone must be open to meeting with the expectant parents prior to the birth parent placement of the child, or the birth placement of the child. Typically not possible in the cases of emergency placements. I won't go into that, that's a whole thing, but about a little over 50% of our placements are emergency placements. That's when we get calls from hospital social workers or whoever saying that they've just given birth to a child and would like to make an adoption plan. Every adoptive parent must send pictures and letters once a month for the first 6 months and once a year around the child's birthday until the child is 18. So usually we have the adoptive parents send these pictures and letters to our office, and then we'll mail them to the birth parents if they want them. If they don't want them, that's okay. You still send your pictures and letters, and we hold them in the office. Everyone must be open to at least 2 in-person visits a year. And we stress the in-person because in the past we've had some adoptive families during COVID try to do Zoom visits and try to make that their visit for the year or their 2 visits for the year, and that's just not acceptable. So everyone must be at least open to 2 in-person visits a year. We encourage adoptive parents to be open to text, phone, and email with their child's birth parents. We believe that open adoption to be in the best interest of the child, and relationships between birth parents and adoptive parents are also an important piece of open relationships. So the adoption process for adoptive parents. So at the top, before the application stage, I'll say this, it is required for all adoptive parents to attend our open adoption webinar. There actually was one yesterday, but our next one is on September 22nd. These were bi-monthly, but I think they're like once the cycle runs out this year, we're going to start doing them monthly again. So after you attend that webinar, you can apply, send in your application with your application fee. Pre-adoption counseling, that's the next meeting. So once you submit your application, you'll be connected to your social worker who will set up this pre-counsel meeting with you. During that pre-counsel meeting, your social worker will talk to you about all of the next steps and the courses that you're going to have to take. And some of these courses include the Open Adoption Education course, our ED course, as we call it, intersectionality course, and the transracial education course. You also are required to take a basic child care class if you are a new parent, and a prenatal drug and alcohol class as well. And this can be signed up for on our website too. For the home study. So after you complete all of your courses, then you'll move on to the home study process. Once you pay your home study fee, then we can schedule your 2 home study sessions that we'll go over with you with all of the paperwork and some other note keeping things. And then once after those 2 sessions, after the first session, I should say, All adoptive parents have 6 months to return all of their paperwork back to us. Once we receive all of that paperwork, then we will schedule your home visit. And the home visit is the last piece of the home study. So we usually schedule that last, obviously, when we get all the paperwork, but we start writing the home study and then we schedule it. And then after your home study approved, then you can move on to the next stage, which is the profile meeting and the video session. So the profile meeting, it talks about how to set up your profile book that you'll provide us with hard copies and electronic copies. And then you'll also schedule yourself for a video session as well. So what we do when we show birth parents these profiles for adoptive parents, once they narrow it down and find a few or just one family that they like, then we show them your video. Match meetings are possible, obviously not possible in an emergency placement because we usually call them pre-placement meetings. And if it's an emergency placement, usually there's not really a pre-placement meeting with the birth parent unless they really want to in the hospital. And then after the pre-placement meeting, if there is one, placement of baby happens. And that's usually when we do legal consents with the birth parents as well. And then we conduct post-placement meetings and supervision before finalization. So every state's different, but in the state of Pennsylvania, it's required to have 3 post-placement visits by our social worker. And in Delaware, since I'm in Delaware, it's required to have 4 done instead of 3. And then you move on to finalization after the parental rights have been terminated. So fees and financial assistance. Our fees range between $33,000 and $41,000 and $350. So the above range, it doesn't include any attorney fees and varies based on the situation. So depending on the situation, yours may be a little more or a little less. We review its fees and policies every 6 months, and the fee schedule and policies are subject to change. And we like to tell people this, and so they're not surprised when we send out new contracts and the updated fee schedule. Our fees are on par with most agencies. However, our quality of personalized services and education of our counseling staff are among the best. Fees are only charged when a service is provided. So we are a fee for service agency. We will never invoice you for any fees unless we are getting ready to provide that service for you. Placement fees are earned at placement, not prior to. Adoptions from the Heart attempts to pay medical bills after the termination of parental rights, lowering the risk of a family's chance of forfeiture of large medical fees. Federal tax credit, it can be over $13,000. You can apply for grants and loans. Employee benefits, there are a lot of employers out there, to my surprise, that actually offer adoption assistance for adoptive parents. And you can fundraise as well. And I think that's it. So if you have any questions or are interested in working with our agency, or if you would like to just talk to a social worker to get more information, you can call our local office, or you can email adoption@afth.org. And these are all of our offices listed with the phone numbers.
Okay. Great. It looks like there's one question already in the chat. I think asking for elaboration on the all children.
No, I'm so sorry. I was just excited that Adoptions from the Heart was certified by the All Children, All Families.
Okay, great.
I work for another
I think you meant, woohoo! Yeah,
exactly.
Any questions before we move on to the next person? I can stay until the end as well if we want to just go ahead.
So I have one quick question. Thank you so much for walking through all the steps that take place. And I was wondering, around the time of finding a match and finding placement, what are some of the factors that play into that? Does it tend to be predominantly personality fit?
Yeah, so with that I didn't mention this, I should have, but when you make your profile key and in that profile meeting that you'll sign up for after your home study approved, you'll also learn how to create your profile key. So every family in our program has a profile key. We have a profile key books in our multiple offices that tell us what the families are comfortable with and what they're not comfortable with. And that's why we always stress that it's really important to attend that prenatal drug and alcohol course because that helps you fill out the back of your key to let us know what level or what comfortability you're at with drugs and alcohol that may have been taken during pregnancy, mental health, issues of conception, or if the birth mom's incarcerated. So that profile key tells us everything that we need to know that you're comfortable with, so we're able to properly match you with a situation. If there's, and we pull multiple profiles, we give birth parents multiple profiles to look at. Sometimes they don't get through all of them and they like the first one they see, but we always tell adoptive parents that we will always bring you to every situation that you match for. And when I say bring you, I mean your profile or in your video. We'll always bring you with the intentions of showing you, but sometimes not everybody is always shown. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you. And it looks like there's another question in the chat about how long are people typically waiting to be matched, and are some people sometimes not matched?
Yes, so this is a question that we get often, and I can't give you an estimated time frame because every situation is different. Some families, they go into our profile, they're active in our profile books for like a couple months until they're picked. And we've had families who've been waiting for a year, for 2 years, 3 years. I've only been here for a year and a half, but I haven't seen anybody waiting longer than 4.5 years in our profile books, or I think it's 4 years. So that's the longest that anybody's waited. And I think that family was actually picked and placed. We don't give a time frame. So that's my answer. Was there a second part to that question? Oh, are people sometimes not matched? No, we always say if you stick it out and stay in our program, we can promise that you will get a baby. We can't promise when, but we can promise that you will be matched. However, if you do decide to leave our program, and I noticed this wasn't in the PowerPoint, but if you do decide to leave our program after you've paid for your courses and the application process and everything. And like I said, we're a fee for service agency. So unless you're placed, we won't request that placement fee, which is one of our highest fees. But if you decide to leave our program at any point, whether that's if you're placed and disrupted or up until you're placed, you'll lose any money that you've paid so far. So we don't provide refunds, is what I'm trying to say. Any other questions?
I have one question.
Yeah.
Would there be a reason for candidates to be excluded, like rejected?
Yeah, so I haven't seen that happen since I've been here, but there have been instances in the past. So like I said in the beginning, you're always under evaluation up until your home study approved. So if there's
Right.
anything at any point, we have the right to not allow you to continue in our program or not allow you in our program at all. So that's where the pre-council meeting comes into place,
Mhm.
because that's when we find out like some information. I think even on the application, it asks you if you've ever been incarcerated or if you've been convicted of a crime. If you have, that will be discussed in the pre-council meeting. Honestly, unless it's something really serious or if it involves child abuse, I don't see
Right.
any reason why we wouldn't deem you appropriate for our program.
Okay.
Anybody else? And you can always call the office if you think of any questions after this, or email our general email.
All right, so I think we're all set to hear from Tiffany with a second chance. Tiffany is also one of the co-chairs for PFP's board. So Round of applause.
All right, let me just get this on slideshow view. Here we go. All right, so happy, Makia, great presentation as always. So happy to follow up. So we're going to be coming from a different angle. Why can't I speak today? We're going to be coming from a different angle, but first I want to introduce one of our team members who's on and new in this arena. You will likely be seeing from her in the future as well. Tierney, could you say hi really quickly for the group?
Hey, everybody.
All right. Tierney Simmons is the permanency supervisor, is one of the permanency supervisors at A Second Chance. She and I both work within our adoptions department, our SWAN department, which is what we call it. And she is one of our resident experts. So we will be going back and forth a little bit during this presentation. One of the cool things I want to share is that we are both also adoptive parents through the foster to adopt process. So if you, at the end, if you have any questions or throughout even, feel free. I'm pretty sure we probably can answer a lot of the questions you may have about adopting through foster care. As Phoebe said, we are with A Second Chance, which is a social service organization located in Philadelphia. And we also have an office in Pittsburgh as well. A Second Chance was established in 1994. It was established by our CEO, Dr. Sharon McDaniel, who actually left foster care and decided that she wanted to begin her own agency to ensure that children are receiving care, not just with anyone, but also to push kin. Kinship was not a big thing at that time, and we really, as an organization, value the supports around maintaining family connections, even if you're talking about adoption. So we have our mission, our vision, our mantra. What we stand for as an organization is just uplifting family, no matter what that family dynamic may look like, as well as ensuring that children are always safe at all times. As an organization, some of the services that we provide are FGDM, or family finding, which is a service that's around bringing families together to help make decisions for themselves instead of social workers making those decisions for them. We also have intake and fingerprinting at our location. We have the SWAN department, like I mentioned before, which is our permanency department, which oversees adoptions, PLCs, reunifications, and so forth. We'll get into a little bit more into adoption and PLC later. And then we have training, support groups, recruitment, and SBH, which is our specialized behavioral health unit, which deals with children who have different types of behavioral or developmental cognitive disorders that require a little bit more attention. All right, some of the things that I want you to be thinking about as we have this conversation is why a special needs adoption. Let me just say this, in the state of Pennsylvania, any child who is elected into foster care is considered special needs because there was a reason that something occurred causing that child to be removed from their biological parent. So any child that is removed from their biological parent without that parent stepping forward and saying, hey, this is what I want, it automatically qualifies that child as a special needs adoption. Some of the other things to think about is older, younger children. I myself went the baby route. Tierney, I think you went a few years older. What are some of your strengths that you're bringing to the table? Who in your family or your surrounding area can support you? You know, we're big on kinship. So do you have a really close neighbor who can be the babysitter from time to time? Things like that. And then what do you expect of your adopted child? Because we all go into this with expectations, even if it's just to be loved in return for all the love that we're willing to give. So a little bit about when you adopt from foster care. When a child comes into foster care, their initial goal is reunification. And what that means is that as an organization, we will be looking to, or as a state agency, not an organization, but as a state agency, DHS would be looking to put that child back with their bio parents if it's possible. Now, sometimes it isn't possible, but typically it is. And in those instances, what we really do look for is people who are going to support that relationship, even if it's not the case. However, one of the things that I really want to share at this time is that there are two types of foster care adoptions that occur. So the first one is the traditional route where you become a resource parent. You get put on a listing, you get a child in your home with the goal maybe of reunification, and then you work as a resource parent, and then if something happens, if the parent can't get their child back, then at that time you are asked if you're willing to adopt. But there's another route, which is why we're here on this call with you today. And that route is a straight adoption route. And this is when you become a certified resource parent with our organization, and then you're put on a list for just to look for children who are free or about to be freed for adoption. And what that means is that we're still going to encourage you to maintain family connections, similar to adoptions from the heart. However, this is not a child where you're running the risk of the child being like snatched away from you. This is one where the state is saying, hey, we're looking to take this step with this child. The parent, for whatever reason, the parental rights have been terminated, and now we need someone to step up and do forever. So that's the second portion, which is the one that kind of brings us to panels like this, which is the one where we are going through the same process. However, we're looking at children who are already free for adoption. There's another thing called PLC that we want to talk to you about today. Tierney, do you want to talk to the team about PLC and what that means?
I'll try. So PLC is where a child is placed in your home, and the child may be with you for forever. But the difference between PLC and adoption is that parental rights are not terminated. So the child is yours for all legal matters, for all legal sakes, but parents still have rights, but you're in charge of the child's education and making decisions for the child's life. But that's really the main difference. But
yeah. So one of the big things about PLCs is it really kind of, what happens is that there's a plan around the involvement when it comes to the parental rights. So it may be every single year you have to send a bunch of stuff about, from the child, like a picture or something like that every single year, or even maybe every single month you have to do that to notify the parents of the child. It may be the parent still gets to visit once a quarter with the child. Things like that are typical of PLC, which are not requirements of families who adopt through our organization. But yeah, I think Tierney said it best, parents still maintain some rights. However, the child, however, the child is still yours for all legal purposes. And when I say yours, I mean like your child, not like your property. All right, resource parent responsibilities. So when appropriate, we are always encouraging people who go the traditional route to take on a mentorship approach with their kids' parents. So we want to, to encourage you to maintain relationships, to support them, and to also, if necessary, maybe walk them through caring for your child, because if you go in the traditional route, there's a possibility that the child is going to go back to their parent. And we want to make sure that they're prepared for that and that there's a lasting bond that's created from that dynamic. Some of the things that we as an organization want to make sure that all of our resource parents are affirming of are LGBTQ youth, our sibling groups. Even if you're only even if only one child comes into your home, if that child has a sibling, we really push to maintain those sibling connections. SVH youth, children who have behaviors that kind of stand out in ways that some people aren't used to. It can be as little as, a diagnosis, or as big as something that will prohibit them from engaging in certain sporting activities, things like that. Mother babies, so every once in a while we have children who have children of their own who are still looking to be adopted. And thinking about, is that something that I can take on? Can I be not just a mother, but a grandmother to a young person and their child? We always support our teenagers. There are more teenagers in our system than any other population. And then another thing is that our kids are coming from, and we are located within surrounding counties of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. So some of our kids are not, even if you're coming from Philadelphia, that doesn't necessarily mean our kid is coming from Philadelphia. And even if you live outside of Philadelphia, that doesn't mean that your child is coming from that location. And sometimes location matters. It means that they may have different experiences if they're an older youth. All right, so a little bit about SWAN, which is our statewide adoption and permanency network. And what it does is it links county agencies with something we call affiliate agencies. And affiliate agencies are agencies that are contracted to work to either certify adoptive parents for the second route, straight adoption, or agencies who are certified to move forward and help a family complete the adoption process. DHS refers the SWAN services to the organization, and then the affiliate agency completes the services so that the adoption or PLC can occur. Some of the services that take place are child profile, family profile, child prep, placement supervision, and finalization. Taryn is going to talk to you all a little bit about each of the services.
All right, a child profile is pretty much a summary of the child's life. It goes through their background, how they came into the system, their medical background, any schooling, if they're school age, and how they are currently. And then it also talks about their family history. Family history is a family profile is about you, about your family, about you. If you have kids, it'll talk about your kids. If you have a husband, a wife, it goes into those details. It also goes into your clearances and your background as well. It'll have facts about your medical history, your family background, and how you choose to parent. And it also it'll also ask you about resources if and when a child comes into your home. Child prep, which is one of my specialties. When a child is in the child prep, we go through the process of having a child work through either going from reunification to adoption, or getting the child into the mindset of thinking about who they are. We have 5 questions that we try to answer during 10 sessions over a 6-month period. And those questions that you see on the screen are who am I, what happened to me, as in why did I come into the system, where am I going, am I going back to my home, am I going back to my family, or am I going to another home, how will I get there, which is it answers the questions of, am I going to go straight back to my home with my family, or am I going to go into another home before I find before I find my forever home, whether it's going back to my biological family or going to another one. And then it answers the question of when would the child know that they belong with that family? When is the child going to know that they are home? And then at the end of that, it comes out with a life book, which is pretty much like a baby book for their life. If they're older, we attempt to get information from when they were a child, when they were a baby, that they may not know. All right, am I doing this one?
Sure, take it away.
All right, the steps in the adoption process. So if reunification has been rolled out for whatever reason, then there goes, and then after that, the goal is changed from reunification to adoption or POC. It can depend on the age of the child. At that point, the rights are terminated for one or both parents, if both parents are in the picture. If the father is identified, the father will be, rights will be terminated as well. We will get a referral for a child profile to get the background of the child. And then it transfers to the adoption units. I don't know about that one. And then once a family has been identified, that family will receive a family profile. And that profile will give the background of the family, like I said. And then once the child profile and the family profile are approved by DHS, and it then goes to finalization. And finalization is the last step to adoption.
So one thing that I do want to note is that in the state of Pennsylvania in general, so finalization for us as well as Adoption from the Heart, it's 3 visits, a minimum of 3. Sometimes it takes families a little bit longer though, but most of the time we can get it done in 3 visits and then get an adoption hearing scheduled. Another big thing, no matter the age of the child, any foster to adopt adoption that occurs is at no cost. The entire process is actually at no cost to families, which, you know, if money is a big thing for you, might be important. All right, so after the finalization, the first thing that happens is you get your rights as the parents. You get a birth certificate that says your name or you and your spouse's name. If you chose to do visitation, then that schedule comes out with the adoption order. If you didn't choose to do visitation with an adoption, then of course you wouldn't get that. You also, for any child who's adopted, foster to adopt, they continue to receive a stipend. So you begin to receive funds for the child from the time that the child is placed into your home. And then after the adoption, if the child is under the age of 13, so if they're an infant, you'll get those stipends from up until their 18th birthday. If they're 13 and older, then you'll get that stipend until their 21st birthday. And that stipend can be used for different things. Most of our families, like, you know, will put it into, like, if they don't need it, then they'll put it into a bank account just to hold for that child, or just as like an emergency fund if anything ever happens. Because at this point, it's not just about that child, it's about you and them and making sure that you both are secure. Also, if you adopt through foster care, that child receives really good insurance until their 21st birthday as well. And then you also qualify, even though you adopted through foster care, you also qualify for the adoption tax credit, which is about $13,000 right now. So anything that, you know, if you bought a bedroom set, if you like any of your purchases, you can get returned up to like $13,000 in a form of an adoption tax credit for completing that adoption. And then after the adoption, there's something called post-permanency services, which is that at any point in time up until that child's 21st birthday, you can always call, and I think the number's on the next slide. You can call 1-800-585-SWAN and get advocacy work, even get respite, help finding summer camps, help just with anything like you can think of. And there will be someone there, your child, you know, you don't ever have to like worry about not having a support network, because it's kind of built into our system if you do foster to adopt. All right, well, that is it for my presentation. I'm not sure if there's any questions, but if you are interested in foster to adopt through a second chance, you can give us a call at 215-564-0790.
So it looks like there is a question in the chat asking, given that there is a stipend for these youth, is there ever an opportunity for that money to go to birth families so they can keep their children?
So that's actually where we start. So right now we operate in the city of Philadelphia. We operate as something called a KUA system. And one of the reasons it was developed was to, and there's even a law that came out called Family First. So all of the work in our entire system, and that's not just in Philadelphia County. Philadelphia County is operating on Family First. Montgomery County, Bucks County, every county in our state is operating something called Family First. And what that means is that the first person that we're starting with, you know, even through our cool model or with the county workers, is the family. If there's any way that a family can keep their child, if it's due to financial reasons, then there are grants, there's services where, you know, whether like housing assistance, there's financial assistance for paying bills. There is, they, you know, sometimes can pay someone's rent up to a year. Things like that are actually where we start off. Typically, if a child comes in care beyond that, then it's not due to a financial reason. It's due to many more reasons that can be extensive beyond that financial purpose. We try to avoid children coming into care due to neglect. And when I say neglect, what I'm saying is like literally poverty, which used to be coined neglect in many instances. True neglect, yes, if that's, you know, if that's the thing, then yeah, but we're not calling poverty neglect anymore as a system. And that's something that we as an agency, even if we get the referral, we will sometimes fight like tooth and nail to ensure that, you know, we're even initially supporting that reunification goal. If we even get the hint that that might be something that was overlooked or missed due to whatever error that occurs, but typically it's caught even before it comes to us. And were there any other questions? And I hope I answered that one fully.
Yeah, we got some thumbs up on that last question response. And the next one is asking to confirm that there isn't any fees for the foster to adopt process.
Yeah, there's no fees for the foster to adopt process. There's no fees. Some of our families choose not to receive the stipend, but depending on like, you know, you do have to make enough money to support you and another individual. However, beyond that, you know, our financial piece is that, you know, in order to ensure that the child is safe and well cared for, we would rather provide you the same stipend that would have been that same money that would have been used to help that birth parent or that family if they were able to maintain rights of their child.
And then,
Go ahead.
oh, and then earlier, Micaiah talked about the timeline range for adoptions from the heart. Do you mind speaking to what the range could be through a second chance?
Yeah, so when it comes to a second chance and what we see in our system, I'm actually that's something I actually monitor for an ongoing basis. Children who are 0 to 12 months, we tend to see them remaining like it takes families on average like 1 to 2 years to be placed with a child that's like 0 to 12 months. That is the largest population that that families come for. So it can take a little bit. 1 to 3, then it typically takes on average about a year for a placement to occur if you're looking for a child that's like 1 to 3. Any point from like 4 to 10, it typically takes about 6 to 12 months. And then 11 and up, it's almost instantaneous. Families really don't experience a wait if they are looking for a child that's like 11 and up, or if they're looking for a child that's a part of a sibling group. So even if it's like 3 young siblings, if your heart is open and you have the ability to take on more than 1 child, typically, even if they're young, you're not seeing as long of a wait, because that's the dynamic that like those are the youth who we see most often in our system as well. And I think there was another question asked to Micaiah that I wanted to circle back and answer for us as well. I can't remember what it was though.
There was a question about if you're ever not matched as well.
Oh, okay, so yeah, just like adoptions with the heart, we do the home study, or which we call the family profile. We do that same process, and we also do a bunch of trainings. Also, our families go through about 24 to 36 training hours per family, and depending on Title 18 offenses, by state law, we would not be able to move forward with you if you've committed a Title 18 offense. So there is a chance that you wouldn't be able to move forward, but that chance would be, you would have to have something really, really big on your criminal record that we get back for us to say, you know what, we can't move forward with you, but typically we don't run into that. Normally when people apply with us, they know the requirements, and they would already know, like, hey, got this thing, and they don't get too far in the process. They'll typically raise the question, and we'll let them know if it's a Title 18 offense or not. Any other questions?
Yeah, it looks like we have one more. Can a reunification ever be reversed once it has been ruled out?
You said, can a reunification ever be reversed so I guess it's at what point? So if we're talking about a straight adoption case, like for our foster to adopt families, once an adoption occurs, no, the reunification can't be reversed. The goal can't go back to reunification. But if you're talking about our traditional route where you become a resource parent, and that one, yeah, the child can be reunified because that's really your goal in that instance. However, if it doesn't work out, then you would then we would look for you to permanency. But the straight adoption route, no, the appeal process happens well before the adoption occurs, so there's no reversal there. All right, well, thank you for taking the time to listen to me. And thank you, Tierney. This was her first session, so great job.
Yes, thank you both so much. I am going to stop the recording and then we can move into the parent panel.